Okay, certainly one of the subjects we're going to cover tonight is going to be RFK's brainworms, and this is going to be on Infinite Plane Radio, which you can catch here at IPS Think Tank on Twitter. But the brainworm story stands out because we were just talking about the deer virus, which is in 33 states, which seems to be some kind of code. And Cub started pointed out in our Gilded that this seems to be connected to perhaps the nematode parasite brainworm, which is common to white-tailed deer. And he's, of course, talking about RFK Jr. He's part of this Kennedy PSYOP family, and there may be some significance to this thing. And someone had pointed this out also in Discord. So I want to get into some of this. Here's something worth noting. His spasmodic dysphonia kicked in when he was 42. And that's a neurological disorder, brain disorder, 42. Just like, for example, his father was killed at 42, and JFK, the most famous headshot in the world. So there's some kind of a theme here that I'm finding to be kind of interesting. And I noted something similar just with the Bidens, looking at this 46, because, JFK was 46, Biden, 46th president, and we were noting, he's the second Catholic president. And his son, Beau, has a brain tumor and dies at 46. So we've been picking up on these connections, these patterns between these world stage characters. And the Kennedys are just incredibly fascinating. Kevin Mooring noted JFK died at the hole in the brain, so this plays into the hole in the brain script. And something else interesting is one of the photographers who photographed RFK Jr.'s death as he fell to his death in 1968 was at ground zero on 9/11, 33 years later, and was the photographer who shot the, quote, falling man. And that photo is now in the possession of Rocket Man Elton John, who collects snuff films, apparently. But more on this RFK. There's got to be more to it than the brainworm. And someone had posted something.
Okay, I am cutting myself off. That was just a snippet from one of my Twitter spaces. If you didn't know, my main Twitter channel was banned from spaces preemptively, likely because Musk is a baby and their entire mind control operation is very sensitive to criticism. But my main account is blocked. My other backup is not. Same phone, same app. I'm not blocked on this one. And I stopped paying for premium because I was being denied the best features. So no big deal. If you go to my Twitter account, IPS Think Tank, not only can you listen live, but you can also get the archives there because they're recorded live, streamed live, and archived there automatically, raw. So if there's anything that gets cut off or clipped, you'll get the full version on X. So go to IPS Think Tank, and in the main newsletter, when I send out live notifications, there's a list of places you can go to listen live, and I added it. So there you go. And that was a conversation which we'll carry on about RFK Jr.'s hole in the brain worm. Unusual story might be a metaphor for the mind virus that he carries, the anti-V mind virus. That's likely the subtext there. Thank you very much. We got a super chat from Thirst for Truth, keeping gas in the tank. I sent out a newsletter this morning about the path to victory. And the path to victory here, the legal victory, is pretty much paved. There's just a matter of going through the right process, and much of it is paperwork, which is not really my specialty. So the next steps to total legal victory were sent out on a newsletter, and I'll put a link if you want to read that. And I generated this image of a cyborg penguin in a tank in front of the courthouse, in front of the media, adjacent to a caged goldfinch. But the next steps, there will be motions filed to serve Goldfinch electronically, subpoenas sent, multiple requests to get email exchanges between Goldfinch and YouTube's legal department so we can find out who specifically was involved in fraudulently stealing my content, representing this other person as me. And I'm also going to be getting copies of all of my criminal complaints filed since 2018. to the FBI, IC3, DA's offices in several states, and all the police reports for cyber stalking. All of this is going to be presented to the other party and the court before the case management meeting in July. And then I have an ACPA case. This is anti-cyber squatting consumer protection. And I've already filed this before. I was just unable to serve him. But once he's served, I will have this refiled and I'll nail him with it. It's a 32-page complaint for a lot of basically property crimes, intellectual property theft. Cyber squatting, domain squatting is one of these things where if you can prove it's done in bad faith, you can win. And I have confessionals. So that's happening. But my point here is that between now and July, I have a lot of legal work to do. So any support that you show the channel is going to go into that because this is winnable. It's winnable, and I think that the better a case I build leading up to July, the more likely Google will settle with me and offer the head of Goldfinch on a charger to hand over to the FBI, which is the objective. We want victory. We're not seeking dollar signs, we're seeking victory because victory means this channel gets back to what it should have been were it not for government interference. And we have legitimately been targeted with censorship. Not the fake censorship from the fake alt media, but real censorship, which we have been pretty immune to. And that's solely the result of our collective intention of keeping this thing running. So I appreciate all of the support, and I'm really looking forward to this summer. I see this as a win. Portal says zookeepers got pinched for painting dogs to look like pandas. Yeah, I saw that in China. The people who think pandas are fake are going to have a field day with that. Joined by a number of individuals on YouTube, Jimbo Akimbo, Jungle Jim, Dua Simpera, Ted Stryker, Ollie Goering, Diana South, X322, Citizen Z. Diana South says head on a charger. Yeah, John the Baptist's head was on a charger, not a silver platter. Someone had corrected me on that. They're like, no, it's not a silver platter, it's a charger. There's a famous painting that shows this. Give me here in a charger the head of John the Baptist. And that's from Matthew 14:8. And that was Herod's daughter. Matt X has just rolled in. Okay, we have about 40 here in YouTube. And on all the other channels, a few dozen. So, okay, let's go ahead and start going over today's notes. I just uploaded a video to the main channel. Chemtrails don't exist, debate me. And that's where we're at. I'm not going to sit here day after day reciting the same points. I think at this point, we need to move this forward. We need to move the conversation forward. And I'm making a promise here, a pledge. If a chemtrail believer can convert me, I will be the #1 chemtrail activist in the country. I will throw SpaghettiOs at priceless paintings. I will play in the freeways. I will glue myself to airplanes. I will not set myself on fire, but I will make a fool of myself on TV in some way to draw attention to the ongoing genocide in progress that's been going on longer than I've been alive, honestly. I've been genocided by chemtrails my whole life. Who knows what my lungs look like? So convince me that I'm a victim and that we're being attacked. Same goes for climate change activists. If you believe in climate change, convince me, and I will be more Greta than Greta, because I am a man of action, and I don't understand why people who believe in these things don't become activists. Maybe it saps your motivation. Is that what it is? I used to hear this thing that, oh, they're putting fluoride in the water because it makes you apathetic and turns you into a communist. Well, maybe it's the same thing with chemtrails. Maybe they do exist, and it's some kind of pacification drug. Just pacifies us. Adaptivia joined us, Penguinati over there in Twitch. Aries1, thank you for showing up. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. We missed yesterday, but I was neck deep in paperwork. Let me play this clip. This was sent to me by Mr. Trustworthy. Santos Bonachos returns. The Sheep and the Goats, 2024. This is good because he had a pretty good, or I won't say good. He had a terrible meltdown I mean, I would hate to even describe the type of meltdowns this individual's had on live streams, uh, violent threats against people in debates and that kind of thing. But he seems to have calmed down, and he's on this show called Killa Priest Podcraft. And I like a lot of what he says, although he has his own spin on things. But apparently, at about an hour and 38 minutes in, he suggests that the Earth is an infinite plane. So let me go ahead and get to that clip. And again, thanks for sending this to me, Mr.
Beautiful
Trustworthy.
Dresden type Romanesque buildings. How did that happen in about 40 years with horse and cart? I'd like to answer that question, please, because Melbourne was founded. It wasn't built. It was founded by the Masons, by the goat people, and Australia is the doorway to Antarctica. And once we realise that the plane we live on is infinite, then we will realise that we can have realities, we can go to other extraterrestrial tourist field.
Now, I like this idea that, yeah, you can go to Mars, you just got to get a boat or take a long walk to Saturn. I like the notion that you don't have to travel through space to get to extra land, more land. And I don't know how this would work. It's interesting to contemplate, but it's no more science fictiony or speculative than mainstream science's concept of space travel, which is a new age concept. It's allegory. It's not science. And by the way, for all those who are still debating or on the fence about whether the moon landing was faked, man went to the moon. But it was movie magic that brought us there, not science. There are some things that we talk about quite often as being fake, but we have to emphasize that there's a reason why people believe in it, and it's because they're not factoring in movie magic and special effects. And that's almost an answer for anything. Special effects. If you're not including in your assessment of the world as perceived through the ubiquitous screens, through all the mediation, if you're not including lies, visual lies, then you're lied to. You're a carrier of lies, a believer in lies. And we're moving, I believe, at least those of us who are skeptical, towards a place of honesty. And part of this is, of course, stripping away the self deception, self gaslighting. And a lot of this stuff is reflexive. They program us to be self gaslighting. But anyway, many people will hear this and they'll scoff. But, there's this question like, what's at the edge? And it's like, well, what's at the edge presumes that we're assuming that the world as we know it is all there is and that you fall off. And I'm like, no, I don't know what's beyond. I don't trust the model, so why would I artificially presume there'd be an edge? But those who accept this model believe that there is an edge to the universe, more or less, but it's just way out there and it's expanding. But they have no answer. What's beyond the point where the universe expands? What's at the edge of the universe? No answer. That's no less ludicrous a question than asking what's at the edge of the earth if it's not a ball. The difference is those who believe in the establishment model have their questions conveniently placed light years away. And those of us who reject that model have our question marks a few thousand miles away. Antarctica, the North Pole, what's up, what's down, these are all question marks for me. And this is a place of agnosticism, which is far more defensible than the comfortable acceptance of establishment explanations, which are provably debunkable, questionable, and are derived from sources that are known for lying and psyoping and bending the news, bending everything. They bend our horizons. Dinah South says, make a fake commercial for lawyers for chemtrail lung settlement. Maybe we should start with that. I like that idea. Are you affected by chemtrail lung? We have to come up with a list of symptoms. And one of them could be sleeplessness, paranoia, whatever it is. We could attach it to a lot of things. We could probably raise a lot. Honestly, there's a lot of people who would suddenly start coughing. Thirst says, I blame Richie from Boston. He chem-boofed thousands while on YouTube. Oh, yeah. I remember how this spread, the belief in it. And it's word of mouth. It's proselytizing. And it's an appeal to ignorance, meaning if you don't know what causes it, then you are the target market for this idea, for this theory, this explanation, this false explanation. Let's see here. Dewis and Paris says, poor Richie from Boston is upset because the end of the world is dragging out too long. Oh, yeah. People have been predicting the end of the world for how long? And it's become the main feature of trutherism, calling it the end times. Jay Digg says, Killa Priest was part of the Wu-Tang Clan, or Wu-Tang adjacent. It's a really good podcast. I mean, if you like astrotheology, and it's educational at a minimum, just learning a little bit about archaic worldviews and the pre-Copernican concept of the world. Dewis and Paris says they could have put stickmen on the moon and true believers would believe regardless. That's absolutely correct. There's nothing they can't be made to believe. Nothing. They can insert it into the realm of possibility. It can become believable. And it's true for even the people who are against the mainstream lies. You know, the seekers are constantly misled, and I'm finding people are just lining up behind various Pied Pipers and believing in the most ridiculous things. And I am a critic of religion, but not just mainstream religion, not just scientism, which is a religion, but I'm also a critic of, I would consider like cult type religions that spring up out of nowhere that need to be analyzed and exposed for what they are. And I think it's very clear that the JFK worship is funded and financed by the same people that brought out the QAnon thing, and it's an intentional act of amalgamating evangelicalism, like the evangelical faith and New Ageism, with Trumpism, but it's 100% a cult. And replacing Jesus with a dead president is insane. It's legitimately insane, but my thinking here, the more I look into it, this is an engineered religion, a paradigm that has been created for the purposes of mind control. And so I'm critical of it, and I'm seeing it blowing up. So it's pretty clear to me that both sides are being targeted with belief systems that further take them away from objective reality. Dewis and Paris says, what a fascinating construct is that it expands our observation, renders reality, hence the infinite plane. Right. That's an interesting concept as well. That if reality is some kind of co-creation, then we're on some kind of plane, and that perhaps the areas beyond what we've been shown are yet to be um, manifested in some way, which is like Minecraft. Do we live on Minecraft? Well, I mean, that's more believable than NASA in a lot of ways. It's not a new concept either. Simulation theory is not new. It's just computer terminology applied to other concepts of our existence and what we are and what it is and what we are in it. And you know, it's established science that we are evolved apes with big egos who cannot confront our own mortality, so we come up with constructs to explain the dead universe. Yeah, we all get that. We all swallowed that pill. We all understood that. We tested on in our indoctrinations, and we've all accepted this is true. This is the establishment model. But I don't think it satisfies all of the available evidence because it discounts individual cognitions when it comes to um, synchronistic patterning that goes outside of linear causality. And it suggests that the experiencer of this realm is somehow intrinsically linked to it in a cybernetic fashion. And the more I look into media, and I wrote an article about this recently about where media and quote magic intersect, it seems like the entire mass media infrastructure, which is just an updated version of religion, is predicated on this idea. It's predicated on the idea that man needs to be constrained physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And by spiritually, I mean that part of us that is connected to the whole. And I say they, whoever is ultimately behind this zeitgeist building media infrastructure are templating it off of older stories, archaic myths. And ultimately, and this is why I'm glad that Santos Bonachos is putting out content, it's astrotheological. It's a story that is rooted in the stars. Clockwork says, is that Bonachos? Yep, that's him. Armin Rees joined us, HBIC on Twitch. David Hazel, thank you for joining, says gravity on the moon is less than that on Earth, therefore stickmin. I think they're already putting time zones on the moon, and they're getting ready to fight over it. But they're going to do everything on the dark side. We're not going to see it. Now, I don't know why they call it the dark side, but the head of NASA actually, said that the moon has a dark side. And that's just the side that we can't see from our perspective. Assuming you believe the establishment model. I mean, I'm kind of like, when I look at the moon, I'm sort of open to several possibilities, but I find it to be perplexing that it's both tidally locked and it rotates every 27 days. Like, how does that happen? It has to be one or the other. Either it's rotating or it's tidally locked, but it's somehow both. All right, let's continue. J Dig says Washington State is spraying for spongy moth tomorrow, non-toxic for people or pets allegedly, but people are advised to stay indoors and it will leave a sticky film where it lands. Spongy moth. Okay. I'm still waiting for the cicada infestations. That was supposed to happen during the eclipse. Linda Curtis says, what if this place is majority belief created? Yes, that's a good question. Let's say that is the case. Well, it's clear that the majority have been converted into matrix batteries and they are manifesting the belief that reflects the interests of those at the capstone, that we've been hijacked. So it's interesting to, consider, what is the influence of the individual on the collective. And some may want to just rule that out and say, no, there is no connection. You're just an ape. And you think too highly of yourself, nothing means anything. Some people get off on saying that. It's like, what are you? Ministry of Love, O'Neill. He's torturing Winston, just explaining to him how he's a speck of dust, how he's meaningless, and how everything is ultimately under Big Brother's control. And some people seem to revel in that. Like, oh, look at you, you silly ape. You think that this means anything. Well, I have plenty of personal anecdotes, but I don't promote that as evidence that there is meaning to it. But if you don't experience this place as intrinsically meaningful and responsive to your thoughts, that's on you. But you can't just say it's apophenia and close a book on it without confining yourself to what I would consider to be a form of illiteracy. I talk about how the majority today have been rendered into visual illiterates. They can't tell real from fake. Well, that's the mental realm, where they put a blinders over your perceptions, but there's a spiritual blindness, I believe, that has been implemented as well. Actually, that's the design. The mystery schools, it's veiled, and they unveil it for the initiates. But if you're listening to Infinite Plane Radio, not only are you inoculated against mind war, but you have all the good insider information without having to be an official initiate. No NDAs, no blood oaths, no sacrificing chickens to Moloch. You just listen here, and you become the most informed audience on the plane, even more informed than most of the perpetrators in the mind war who can't even talk about it because they're compromised. We're uncompromised, unchained, unboxed, uncontrolled opposition. TikTok will automatically label AI generated content. Why? Because people are visually illiterate. They have to be told this is real, this is fake. We have to hold them by the hands because they will believe anything because they have no mental immune system, aka mind aids. And there is a cure for mind aids. It's called skepticism. It's called rejecting the authority of the screen. TikTok announced it will automatically slap labels on AI generated content and videos to better inform users. TikTok has adopted content credentials, which attach metadata to posts to help platforms identify which posts are AI generated. This will be rolled out on Thursday and in the next few days. So there you have it. They have to tell you real or fake because you can't tell for yourself. Welcome to the desert of the designated real. Dewis in Paris says, whether it's Minecraft or simulation or God's green earth, it's still our present reality and the only one we have presently. So it doesn't matter what we call it. To me, the question isn't shape. The question is open or closed system. And I think the artificial closing of the system is what we're really looking at when we're looking at the model we've been given. And again, it's not about shape. The blinders they put on you to turn you into a believer effectively close you off against arriving at the correct interpretation of things. You're never going to see a psyop, or you're never going to see propaganda or perception management operations for what they are, because you're wearing this digital hoodwink over your face, this digital veil. Until you remove it, you're going to be walking around as a dupe. It's absolutely the case. You are a fool. Truman in a Truman Show. Until you, and this is not something anyone can do for you. This is why I don't think it makes any sense to try to wake people up. No one can tell you what to believe, if your operating system is trusting the screen. Then it becomes a battle of which authority do I trust, mainstream or alt? And if you're trusting alternative authorities, you're falling for the main trap that gets 99% of the freethinkers and gets them into the anti position. Mr. Trustworthy says Dr. Sebi cured chemtrail lung with a smoothie consisting of vinegar and 7 crows fed through the nose. Someone's going to try that. Diana South says ferment those cicadas and make vinegar or wine. Joined by Howard Boyd. Hey Timmy, grace and peace, good job. Thank you for joining. And I'm going to read the comments on the main videos here in a moment. I upload videos on the main channel, and I'm trying to get those comments first. Stranger Day says the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds put on an amazing demonstration of precise control of totally natural condensation trails here as they roared over our city last weekend. Yeah, again, how many decades have you been inhaling chemtrails, and what effect has it had on you? Show me your chemtrail lung. Show me an x-ray. Show me where the airlines or the secret military jets or drones or unicorns or whatever is spraying the skies, show me where it has affected you. And show me where or how the chemtrail theory is more likely to be true than climate change. Because right now, climate change theory beats chemtrail theory if you're just going by argumentation. It's just the facts. The other, a major fact here to point out is that both chemtrail theory and climate change theory are both fake. They're both false. These are both psyops. Stranger Day says straw man much. No, I'm pointing out that chemtrails is a belief system. It's a belief that is attached to this boxed paradigm. It's the right-wing version of climate change. And all you can do is deny yourself any kind of information about condensation trails, about the upper atmosphere. And if you make an argument from ignorance, you may convince the ignorant. You can appeal to them. But those who know aren't going to fall for it. And my point here is that you can't win this debate without studying both sides. And so I'm hoping that one of you who truly believes that you're being harmed by, quote, chemtrails can maybe debate me on this and educate yourself about the contrail side and then debunk contrails. Debunk contrails. Debunk the globe. It's not enough to say the earth is flat and then never talk about the globe model. So you're going to say those are chemtrails, but you're never going to talk about contrails? Like, I'm talking about the measurable effects of hot air in the rarefied atmosphere above 20,000 feet. Like, why is that even controversial to say? Have you ever taken boiling water on a winter morning in freezing temperatures and thrown it into the air? Like, this is observation. You can't just reject science. You can reject fake science, but science is based on observations that are testable, repeatable, and if you can find a way to predict chemtrails, you might have a case. But guess what? Contrails are predictable. Stranger Days asks if there can be a third option. Yeah, the third option is this. They don't exist. There's two options, chemtrails or climate change. Somebody's destroying Gaia, and man's doing it, but who do we blame? Do we blame consumers and capitalism or government? It depends on your political predilections, left, right, controlled opposition, and mainstream. The third option is agnosticism, or I would say a realistic perspective. Both of these are psyops. Enslaved by Truth says the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds use smoke trails, not contrails. Exactly. Yeah, I read your long comment, Stranger Days, and I can read it. In fact, if everyone wants, who wants me to read it? Do we want to get into chemtrail belief systems? Because it's not based on knowledge. You're believing it. And one other point here, there's not unanimous consent. You know, climate change, people believe climate change is caused by CO2, by cows and cars. But chemtrail believers have like 50 different things they point to. Oh, it's HARP. No, it's stratospheric injections. No, it's invisible planes. It's drones. It's airlines. Like, which planes is it? And the fact of it is, there are like 50,000 channels on Twitter all day long spamming pictures of regular contrails. So there's no distinction there. There's those who say that contrails are chemtrails, and those who say, no, it's some invisible stuff we don't see. So invisible gases destroying the Earth. Okay, I get it. That's what you're basically saying. And then there's the other thing. Is it poison? Is it setting up the atmosphere to burn? Is it killing the crops? Like, there's so many things that these things are alleged to be doing. But the only thing I can provably show that chemtrails do is they make people apathetic and unwilling to take any action. That's the only thing I can see. So Let's Go says, let's hear it. Okay, I'll go ahead and read your comments, everyone here, so we can see the best argumentation, which is worth hearing. But again, one more point I have to bring out here. The burden of proof is on you. You have to prove your chemtrails. Prove it. I don't have to prove contrails. Contrails exist. I could create them. You can't create chemtrails. So let's go ahead and go through this. I'll read it just because. Here he says, Tim, you did it. You caused me to stay up past my bedtime writing this long post. So here goes my take on the matter. Why the false dichotomy? I believe it was Duas Impera who suggested there may be a third option. I propose there certainly could be, maybe four options. Straw mans should have zero place in the debate. For example, stating if one believes something other than a normal contrail billows behind a plane, they must believe it's a deadly chemical concoction. That's a straw man. Now, is it a straw man? The reason they're called chemtrails is because for decades they have been called chemicals. That's not a straw man. That's using your own label. So don't call them chemtrails. Call them contrails. So it's not a straw man argument. It's you dodging the fact that for decades your cult, or what I'm going to call it, the chemtrail cult, has been calling it chemicals forever. So don't say that I'm wrong for calling it chemicals when it's called chemtrails. It's not a straw man. He says, what if it's not chemicals or metals? What if it's not organic? Yeah, it's ice, but quote, if I told you there was an air show in my town performed by the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds, and as they flew in various formations, white trails appeared behind the jets, and on occasions while they were circling, the trails sputtered off puffs of white clouds in an on and off manner. Does that have to be all natural and organic condensation trails, or is it metal, chemicals, cocktails, strontium, aluminum, and barium? What if it's neither? Maybe it's just smoke, like the Skywriters used. Edit, I just read Skywriters use low viscosity, watery oil injected into a heater that vaporizes like a large electronic cigarette. Okay, Stranger Day says, for the record, I don't believe in chemtrails. Okay, so you're not even a chemtrail believer, and you're defending chemtrails. This is interesting. I don't know where to go with that. Like, who's the chemtrail that you're defending here? Or are you positing that there's something else going on? So we'll get to it. Let's continue with your very long post. Very well written. By the way, back in those days when I used to see Skywriters weekly, I never saw condensation trails persist and grow and spread to form odd oil stain looking cirrus clouds that eventually grayed out the entire sky. So here's a challenge. Here's a challenge. Because I get a lot of chemtrail believers who will say, I've seen these trails that spread out and cover the entire sky. Do a time lapse. There's nothing more observed in human experience than the sky. Like, the sky is one of the most observed things. We're always looking at the weather. Everybody sees the sky every day. And you're telling me there is not one single time lapse of showing one of these magical things graying out the entire sky. Find me one. Again, burden of proof is on you. Show me something unusual is going on that cannot be explained by conventional meteorology. Prove it. And if you prove it, look, here's the thing. If you can prove the existence of these things and debunk contrails, you will win the internet. Not only will I become your chemtrail champion, but I will make sure that we get a give, send, go, and we'll give tons of money to the lifesaver who managed to put a stop to the poisoning of our children and pets, or whatever it's doing. Goes on to say, I did see a lot of condensation trails, but those trails that dissipate within a few seconds. Okay, today I'm looking up at the sky, and the trails are dissipating in seconds, but that's because of the temperatures. Duas in Paris says, I don't think he's defending chemtrails. He just doesn't want the box closed before it's properly looked inside. Well, no, that's not logical if he's not looking at chemtrails as one explanation and contrails as the other. He's ignoring contrails. And if you're not willing to look at the science of contrails, then you are not looking at this completely. Before you can look outside of the box, you have to look at what's in the box. It's like I heard some noise in the woods when I was sleeping last time I went camping. Was it a raccoon? Was it deer? Or was it a Bigfoot? Well, I'm sorry, but that's a non sequitur. The Bigfoot hasn't been established to exist, so you cannot include that in your list of possibilities for what you heard while you were camping that night. Similarly, you cannot throw in something that hasn't been proven to exist without first looking at what does exist. So you hear a noise in the woods. It's a deer, or it's a raccoon, or a bird. It's not Bigfoot. Sorry, not Bigfoot. You see trails in the sky. Is it condensation? Is it jet exhaust? Or is it something that nobody has proven to exist? Sorry, you don't get your chemtrails and you don't get your Bigfoot as an option. They're not in the realm of possibility. So, no, it's a non sequitur fallacy. We don't get to say, well, I'm just remaining open minded. It might be invisible unicorns marking their territory. Sorry, doesn't work. He goes on to say, I was always into flight, even took some flying lessons in the early 80s. I observed jets and planes in awe, and all through the 70s and 80s, I do not recall seeing persistent contrails ever. Now, persistent contrails have been observed since the 50s, or actually since before that, but in the 50s, the Air Force came out with this chart called the Appleman chart, and they used this to predict contrails. Now, why do they predict contrails? Well, you got military jets. If they leave a trail, the enemies will see where they are. So how do you remain stealthy? Don't leave trails. Well, how do you not leave trails? You don't fly in those areas at those altitudes that will produce the trails. It's predictable. It's based on pressure, atmosphere, humidity. That's it. So the fact that it's predictable and there's a chart is something that you must confront. So you cannot make an intellectually honest claim that contrails don't exist. You have to confront that. Goes on to say, I'm not saying they didn't exist, maybe they did, but I didn't start noticing the phenomenon until the 80s. Yeah, they did exist. And a lot of people say, well, you're not old enough to remember. But when I was a kid, the sky was blue and the sun was yellow, and there were no trails. Not true. And I've heard that quite a bit. And the sun is green, by the way. If you want to, but I mean, the sun isn't yellow. It was never yellow. You'll see it maybe yellow or red near sunsets, but or the sky. Is the sky blue? Yeah, it varies. You can't make these blanket statements because it's always changing. But there's no qualitative difference between the sun and the sky from now and decades ago. And that's a argument that many people make. But to continue here, when I started seeing it, I thought it was odd, but I didn't get a whole lot of thought. Then a few years later, shortwave radio, Alex Jones, and others started talking about the chemtrails. Could there be another possibility? Could it be a psyop? Could there have been a conspiracy by black operatives to spray inert gas and smoke, pick your non-poison, to start a conspiracy movement that would put division between us? No, it couldn't be that. No way, man. Nobody in government or the media or dark underworld of secret societies, intelligentsia could be so cruel and thoughtless as to conspire to gaslight the public with divisive theater, just like there are no conspiracies to present fraudulent nobody died events to the public, nor to conspire to create illusions of warfare. There are no conspiracies. Okay, now what you're suggesting here is that maybe chemtrails exist, but they're not harmful and they're not changing the weather, but they were put there to convince people that they're harmful and changing the weather. Interesting, but you still have to weigh that against condensation trails. And when you say condensation trails don't exist or it's a fake explanation, you have to go back to 1958's Appelman chart and debunk that. Portal says, remember the parasitic elites walk among us. They wouldn't spray slow death trails and give themselves smoker's cough. Unless the parasitic elite are reptilians and they're making the atmosphere more hospitable to their kind. Enslaved by Truth says, this is an anecdotal trust me bro statement. Some airlines used to let you listen to airplane radio traffic. I was flying on a chemtrail day and the pilots were talking about the extra air traffic. Doesn't mean anything though. Well, that's the thing. The letter here that I'm still reading is suggesting it's not regular airplanes. So you can't even say it's pilots. This is what I mean. It's tricky. Look, it's very tricky. And the truth shouldn't be tricky. Like this guy says, oh yeah, it's being caused by commercial airlines. This guy says, no, it's not airlines. Then what is it? Let me continue to read your post here, but you've established, Stranger Days, that you don't believe in chemtrails. So what are you arguing for? Decorations? They're putting lines in the sky to create the illusions of chemtrails to create a chemtrail movement. Okay, why? If the whole purpose of it is to convince people that the sky is falling, they already have that with global warming. Now, you could say, well, maybe they're spraying the sky to make us think they're spraying the sky, to make us think they're changing the wet. I guess I'm trying to figure out where you're going with it. Let's continue. He says, let's have a debate and acknowledge that the topic is unlike the Mandela, which only has binaries. This topic is non-binary, not just Coke and Pepsi. Even the wokers can appreciate it. Another false dichotomy is that it must be Delta or the military, such as if you fly with Delta, you're killing mankind. How about maybe FedEx or UPS or CIA planes or Chinese planes? We have no problem allowing their balloons to fly. Okay, well, the thing is, the trails that everybody points to, and I'm talking every single chemtrail believer, they all point to commercial airlines. They look at the grids. Nobody's saying, yeah, a bunch of FedEx planes flew over, a bunch of UPS planes, and now there's grids. Nobody makes these distinctions. And if you're going to say there's a distinction, it's on you to prove it. Enslaved says the easiest method would be putting additives in the fuel of select craft. Even with that explanation, you have to deal with predictability. So are they only putting the chemtrail juice in the airplanes on the days where contrails could be formed? Again, it's predictable. That's a problem. In fact, it's not a problem. It's a chemtrail killer. The Appelman chart killed chemtrails. They don't exist. Now, to continue though, if you're saying something is going on, some invisible gas is changing the weather, then please tell me, what is it? Are you just arguing for climate change? I have considered that possibly they do exist and that the chemtrail juice is what melted the steel beams on 9/11. Has anyone considered that? Maybe chemtrails can melt steel beams? That chemtrail juice? All right, continuing, he says, we seem to have no problem with the Chinese balloons, but couldn't it be Chinese planes? So if you say that we should protest in the streets against the PSYOP, who do we protest? China, the UPS? I seem to recall zoomed in photos of planes with no markings. How would I know who to protest against? Okay, there you go. So I'm reading your comments directly. I'm not putting words in your mouth. So you're positing here it could be unmarked planes. Well, where are these unmarked planes? I have to read these. I'm only doing this because they're taking the time to leave these comments, but we're going to debate it because this topic needs to be put to rest. So a follow-up comment. As to bringing a meteorologist to your side, I have to ask, do you assume that no so-called scientist would have a financial or political motivated agenda such as they would never lie? Now, that argument there is suggesting that all meteorologists are lying about chemtrails. Well, again, you have to deal with the charts. You have to deal with the inherent predictability of condensation trails. If they weren't predictable, you might have a leg to stand on. Spirit Jordak says, Tim has gone full pro-CNN, pro-NASA, pro-Wikipedia. Now, on this, I'm going to say you're wrong. Wikipedia, NASA, and CNN would all agree that water is wet. To be a truther now, do you have to say water is dry? That's ridiculous. Just that right there is a mischaracterization of my perspective. If anything, you're pro CNN and you're pro NASA if you believe in chemtrails. You're the one adopting a belief system that serves the power elite because both chemtrail and contrail get you to accept the premise of anthropogenic climate change. You accepted that premise. Good for you. Spirit Droic says, one of the most intelligent persons I've ever heard went totally in denial of his own eyes. I'm not in denial of what I'm seeing. I see the trails. And again, this Spirit Jordak has no agreement with Stranger Days. He's trying to agree with Stranger Days that I'm somehow a CNN show. But these two guys don't agree. Spirit Jordak believes that it's airplanes. And this other guy says it's not airplanes. So again, there's no agreement among chemtrail believers. Xanit Butane says it could be a pointless division, like the elites are creating random division among people. I think that is it. It is it. I think that chemtrail belief is put there as an umbrella conspiracy to get right-leaning free thinkers under their control, under their spell. So that's your comments. I've read them. And again, I'm reading it to be, true. All those who have subscribed to the channel, if you're going to leave comments, I will go through it. But we are going to debate this because it's dishonest at this point. It is a very dishonest proposition, and it's based on logical fallacies. And if you have to use logical fallacies to convince somebody of something, or if you don't even believe in it, you don't know what it is, but you're trying to come up with theories to explain it. Okay, cool. Let's talk about maybe UPS is dumping stuff in our skies. Maybe Chinese balloons are spraying our skies. Let's talk about that. Well, if that's the case, you have no evidence. So it's just conjecture. It's just conspiracy theorizing. But worse, it's doing so in denial of decades and decades of observational data. But I don't expect everyone to believe me. I want people to know for themselves what is knowable and what is merely conjecture, because there is an incentive to lie to you. I think we can all agree. There's a great incentive to lie to every single one of us. That's all the lie world order does. But the lies that blame the free market only appeal to the political left. The lies that blame government only appeal to the political right. It's a bifurcated psywar. Therefore, chemtrails will never be appealing to the right. But instead of having non-belief about eschatology and anthropogenic climate change, instead they're given an alternative set of facts. Oh, this is what's causing the changes that you're all seeing. And a lot of these people on X, these big chemtrail channels, they actually say this. They say climate change is real, but it's caused by airplanes. D's Nataz says, I always thought that if there are trails, they'd be sprayed by miniature drones to make them look like airliners, but smaller in scale and flying closer to the ground. See, I've entertained that notion as well, but then what got me, I did talk to a pilot about this. Quincy calls in about it, and it's pretty clear that it has to do with temperature. That this is ice, and it's not going to happen at lower temperatures. Lower altitudes, generally speaking. Although you can find exceptions depending on temperature, but the phenomenon is explainable just by looking at temperature and altitude. Cannabear says, I prefer normal clouds and normal contrails as opposed to the chest chemtrail looking contrails that are not chemtrails. Look, this is all confusing. It's all confusing. And my whole point here is just to make this argument. If you're not able to debunk contrails, you don't have a leg to stand on. And that's just a heads up for when we do these debates, because my position is going to be contrails exist. And your position is something's going on, including that or apart from that. Clump says it's a big fuzzy haze. Yeah, it's a big fuzzy persistent haze that's inexplicable, and we're trying to get to the bottom of it. Okay, let's move on. I think we've done that to death, but it's worth talking about. It really is. The Unmediated Mind says, Tim, You may be interested in the syncretism of the noise in Leave the World Behind and the noise of cicadas. It's incredibly loud and has a quality to the noise, a similar quality. It does, doesn't it? Now that I'm thinking about it, there was this noise in the movie that had to do with drones passing over or something, and it caused one of the characters' teeth to fall out. Okay, I'm going to have to look into that. Thank you for that pointer there. You know, I'd watched that other series on Netflix called Three Body Problem, and it ends with cicadas. And the timing of these two cicada broods emerging at the same time hasn't happened in 200 years seems to be significant. And that one was about an alien invasion. So Canavar says, I thought chemtrail people were testing heavy metals and stuff falling from the sky. Yeah, that was a thing for a while. And it was like, okay, they're dumping something on us. But I don't know what the answer is. I think there was a reasonable or a logical explanation for what was found in the soil. But yeah, again, the unmediated mind brings up the cicada thing, and the fact that it came out that cicadas were in this Leave the World Behind is highly significant because I mean, sorry, in Third Party Problem, because the timing of it. You're gonna have a movie on Netflix, which is all encoded with the mainstream news. It's concurrent, it's predictive, but you're watching something on Netflix and it ends with cicadas just as this cicada brood is emerging. Not a coincidence. Now, some people who are very into this chemtrail theory, they ask me why I stay on it, and the reason why we're staying on it is because what we do here is we arrive at truth. We're eliminating truth or orthodoxies, and if there is any truth to it, we're going to be the ones to find it. If the Earth is not a ball, who do you think is going to figure it out first? Who's going to find tangible information? Who's actually looking? There are so many people just following and following and believing. Very few seekers. And I'm noticing too the word researcher is being heavily demonized by the media. Like Maxwell Azrello was a independent researcher in scare quotes. But it requires further research, not just further entrenchment into your beliefs, but stepping outside of your beliefs and seeking more information. That's what we should be doing. So if you're and I was a chemtrail default not non-believer. Like I was like, yeah, okay, fine. And I realized that my error. I thought, okay, well, my argument was the power elite are so screwed up. They mess with our minds. They screw with our subconscious. They manipulate us in every single way. It's just this big um, narcissist in the center of all of our lives. Big brother always just cajoling, screaming at us, manipulating us. And I thought, why wouldn't they dump poisons on us? Like it makes perfect sense. And that argument doesn't actually hold any value. It's a appeal to motive. The bad guys are so bad, conditions are so bad, then this belief is justified. And it's kind of a bias thing. But once I realized that that's not a valid argument, I stopped using it. And I looked up this argument because a lot of people would say this to me. Like, look, I hear your perspectives. You make a lot of sense. But are you telling me that the bad guys actually don't hate us? Are you telling me that the cabal loves us and they wouldn't spray us? And at first I was like, how do I counter that? That's a good argument, or is it? Then I figured out it's not. Stranger Day says, trust the meteorologists. They'll tell you if the earth is flat or not. No, okay, here's the thing. You can't just reject science. If the meteorologist tells you that the sky is blue, are you going to say, oh, nope, you're a liar? No. What you're doing here, and this is an issue that I see with truthers in general, is they say science lies. So I don't trust scientists. No, I'm sorry. Science doesn't lie. There's a point where when something is outside of our realm of direct observation, where you're required or you're expected to put faith in scientists, and that's where you can't trust them. But when it comes to observational data, why would you just say, well, we're going to just reject all of that? No, I'm not anti science. I'm anti fake science. I'm not anti journalism. I'm anti fake news. Some news is valid, some isn't. Some observations are valid, and some aren't. And the observational data used to keep military planes undetectable since the 50s is valid. And if you can't confront that, then you have no leg to stand on. And again, I would ask, what are you trying to convince us of? If you're not saying it's chemicals, are you saying they're manipulating the weather? Are you offering us a climate change explanation? What is your position? What is your position? My final question on this. What is your position on what these so-called trails do? Enslaved to Truth says, is the atmospheric data needed to use something like the Appleman chart made publicly available daily? Yeah, the chart's decades old, and there is a site by NOAA, which none of you will trust, but all it does is it tells you what the pressure is, what the humidity is, and you can actually predict based on this the likelihood of condensation trails. But look, this is all stuff that we can take to the debate table. Dewis and Paris says, yep, I think that's the crux of it here, Tim. We should keep in mind that just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not trying to get you, just not sure of the nature of the getting. Yeah, and this is a paranoid thing. But look, if you can laugh at if you can laugh at Greta or Al Gore, like you look at these two clowns, you know they're clowns. You knew that a long time ago before you even, I mean, a lot of us have already debunked climate change as an eschatology, as a cult, as a way of scapegoating the free market. Like we can take that apart all day. You can mock the notion that cow flatulence is causing polar bears to drown. You can laugh at their science. And you can say that's ridiculous. There's no evidence for climate change. Really? Well, a lot of people believe it. But when you look at your own position, how are you presenting anything different than what they're presenting? I'm saying that contrails exist, chemtrail theory is a false explanation for it, and that if you're a chemtrail believer, you may as well be a climate change believer. But I would like an answer on that. What are you saying these trails do? Because they didn't kill you. You were alive before they started spraying the skies with these persistent trails, and you're observing it decades later. What has changed? Has the color of the sky changed? Has the weather changed? Has the climate changed? Has it affected you physically? And if you can't make the case that it has done anything, then what are you exactly positing here? And I think one of the reasons why this one is so persistent is that unlike every other conspiracy theory, this one has evidence right in front of your face every day. You can't point at reptilians, but you can point at the sky. And it gives you a lot of, I guess, reasons to see that maybe Alex Jones is right. Because you're like, look, nobody cares. Everybody's dumb. Everybody's a zombie. Nobody's looking up. I get people saying, oh, you just don't look up. Maybe you should leave your basement. It's like, I spend a lot of my time outdoors. I observe the skies all the time. I may make a more systematic study of the skies here now that I'm on this issue, but it's not for a lack of observation. And people are just basically gaslighting you if they're telling you that don't trust your senses or you're not really looking closely enough. Well, maybe you are. Maybe there's nothing to see. It's a big nothing burger. Enslaved by Truth says, well, we need a lot of data to use those charts. We need to know the altitude, airspeed, fuel, engine specs, and atmosphere. We have all that. That's the point. We have all that information. All right, let's move on. I believe we're going to move on. We're not going to get an answer. I'd like an answer from Stranger Days. I read your letter. If you could answer one question, what are you positing these trails do? And again, I'm not saying the trails are from airplanes. I'm not saying they're from drones. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying, what do these trails do? He says, what do they do? Look at the divisiveness it's causing. I'm the only person making any division over this, so you can't say it's that. You can't say they've been dumping this fake stuff on us for 40 years so that IPS could raise hell about it in 2024. You have to realize I am the only person in this entire truther realm that doesn't believe in chemtrails, that speaks about it. It's an orthodoxy. I'm the only person using this as a divisive tactic, and I'm doing so intentionally because there's no chemtrails off world stage. There's no climate change there either. Upside down guy says you just don't know the correct way to look up. Or I'm getting paid by Delta Airlines. Like every day that I put down this notion that they're dumping poisons on us and I calm everybody down, they cut me a check. But anyway, we're going to do a debate. And I would like to know what these things are doing. And he says causing divisiveness. You're right in one main sense. Climate change. What is the whole purpose to climate change? It's to turn people against capitalism. What does chemtrails do? Turns you against government. You realize that's the bifurcated nature of this thing. And if you're falling into any psyop that has a partisan belief, like if you're on the left, you can say this. If you're on the right, you say this. You are looking at a psyop. I'm looking at our modern day political landscape as an intentionally designed political horseshoe. Political horseshoe theory is not a theory, it's a fact. It was designed this way. And what happens is people who see through the mainstream, who are reflexively and even understandably paranoid and distrustful, are led into the controlled opposition that keeps them focused on one thing, the middle, waking people up. Harmon wants to open phone lines. Yeah, I'll open phone lines. And look, I don't accept anecdotal. Anecdotal evidence is as good as lies. If you're going to say that you've seen trails and they're special and they're different and they're qualitatively different and they've changed the weather, uh, show me video. Don't tell me you don't have a camera. Isn't it funny that in the age of the smartphone, nobody's presenting us with evidence of UFOs? There's this big UFO story in Vegas right now. And the guy's calling the cops, talking about these things, describing them. Oh, they're 8 feet tall, they're humanoid, they look scary like aliens. Like, well, why are you calling the cops? You should be recording these things. Cops don't do anything. And I'll get into it, but that family that saw this alien in their backyard has gone further to say that it's a demonically haunted house now, and that upside down crosses are floating around, Bible pages are flipping around. It's insane. Stranger Day says, you obviously haven't seen the back and forth arguing at homonyms on Twitter about chemtrails. No, I follow it. I see ubiquitous, unanimous, 100% total agreement. Show me one person that doesn't believe in chemtrails on the truther side. They all believe in it. The only person offering any kind of resistance is me. And I comment at these big channels and they ignore me. They don't address me. So no, chemtrail belief is 100% a government funded psyop. No different than climate change. And again, there is no consistency on what it's actually doing or who's doing it. So it's not even a coherent theory. And it's done in complete ignorance of the existing scientific data on the formation of condensation trails. So you're dealing with a mystified, confused set of conspiracy theories to explain a very well understood phenomenon. You'd be like, what are those white things up there? They call them clouds. Could be cotton. No, 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 that's not cotton. Those are life forms. It could be aliens. No, 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 those are ghosts. You know, when we die, we go up to the stratosphere and we just sort of hang out there. We turn into this fog. Like, we wouldn't sit here all day debating what clouds are. But when it comes to condensation trails, we do. We act mystified. If I were to come out here and say, those white things up there, I don't know what they are, you would say, well, look at the science on it. And then Stranger Days would say, oh, no, 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 that's what CNN says. You're just going to be a CNN NASA shill? We don't know what those things are. Oh, we don't know what they are? Okay. And we can't trust the. No, no, those meteorologists, they're being paid to lie about the big balls of cotton in the sky, telling us that it's clouds. How funny. Oh, it's moisture. It's ice. It's cold temperatures. Now, that's a bunch of science mumbo jumbo. Obviously, there's a more magical and mystical explanation for clouds. I just can't just believe what they tell you. See, there's a point where contrarianism replaces the actual seeking of an alternative explanation or seeking more answers. Knee-jerk contrarianism, just rejecting it all, is not a good place to be. So again, explain to me Oh, phones are open, by the way. 505-349-0420. Got a caller. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, there you are.
Hey, what's up, Harmon? Good to hear from you.
Yeah, yeah. On that, years ago, I got into that. The what do we call them? Contrails? Not contrails. What do they call them?
Uh, I don't
Vapor.
I don't know
Whatever.
I don't know what to call them now. Honestly, I don't know what to call them. Chemtrails? Chemtrails, not
Yeah,
chemtrails?
chemtrails. That's what I was going to say. Well, they're definitely not poison. And come on, people, get over that. That should have been gone out of your head by 2010. Um, poison is such a dumb thing, but I did study into it, and I learned. And when I first started reading about 2012, is between 28,000 feet and 32,000 feet is what the science books at the time says that the condensation trails are developed and at a certain temperature, and then they do produce them. And it said between 28 and 32,000 feet. I said I don't know how high up these things are, but I also started looking at when my little granddaughter and grandson, they're talking about there's 10 types of clouds now. So I'm looking at their school book. I think it was in health or science, and they got 10 clouds now, and they're naming those clouds that we call contrails. So they've actually changed the names and added them to clouds. So we used to have like what, 5 clouds, 6 clouds? Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember given a course, or we took a class on the different types of clouds, cumulus, cirrus,
Yes.
and the thing is, what contrails are technically called are anthropogenic cirrus clouds because they're formed at the same place as cirrus clouds. It's when it's basically ice, but they're man-caused. So it's man-caused cirrus clouds. They're literally clouds. It's not a spray.
I just got through reading their books and stuff. It just says it's natural nature. That's what they're teaching the kids coming up. And of course, it only takes 12 years after they finish. Everyone behind them, they're going to be believing what they say. That part I don't know about
Well,
because they're actually doing
okay.
that in the
It's
schools.
it's natural in the sense that it's a observed natural phenomena
It's not
or aspect
natural.
of it. Isn't okay. If you take boiling hot water and you go into your front yard
I
on a
understand.
cold winter day,
I
okay,
saw that
now
video
yeah,
years ago.
you throw the hot water. What it does is natural when it freezes in the air. That's
Mm,
natural.
man, intervened in that though. It's not. It didn't just happen. No,
No, no, but like,
it's not natural.
well,
You
okay,
can try to make it sound
okay, no,
natural all you want, but it's man's intervention
it's
that
a qu-
caused it.
it's a quality of nature. It is within the laws of nature to explain why why boiling water thrown into the cold air would freeze like that. That's not
Show me
unnatural.
where that's at in nature.
Well, it's not unnatural. The effects,
Show me where's it
water,
natural? Where's
w-
it in nature?
water puts out fire. That's natural. You blow on candles.
Where is what you did just throwing the boiling hot water? I wasn't even going to argue about this part. When you brought something up so simple as throwing
What I'm
water in
saying is,
the air,
it's
where's
not.
that in nature?
What I'm saying is it's not. Is it unnatural for hot water to react in freezing temperatures in that way?
Well, I would like to see hot water in nature that's in freezing weather.
Okay, that shouldn't be hard to find. But here's an example: people throwing boiling water into freezing air. Now, what I'm saying is that boiling water freezing in the air is not unnatural. It's a natural phenomenon. The fact that man is doing it is immaterial. This is expected. It's understood. It's repeatable, observable. We know what will happen in certain temperatures when you throw hot water into it. It condenses into
Well,
essentially
does
steam.
that exist in nature?
Yes, man is part of
Where
nature.
does it exist in nature?
Find a hot geyser on a cold winter day. I mean, this is
And it's going to do the same thing, you think?
yeah, actually
You don't know.
wait, let me
You
find that.
don't know yet.
Wait. You're making an argument here that that it doesn't exist because you don't know. That's an argument from ignorance.
That's what
Like,
I'm saying. I don't know. I'm asking, do you know?
well, let me look it
That's
up
all
for
I'm
you.
saying.
Let me look it up for you. Okay, so hot water in cold air. Let's look up geysers. We'll try that, or something like that. We'll try to find some example. I mean, I can do this research on the fly for you, but I want to point out that you're not making an argument against it. This is a change in the
No,
state
I
of
just don't
matter.
like that you threw hot water in the air in an area that wouldn't have hot water. So that's all I was
Linda
saying.
Coder says fog can freeze on the roads. What does that mean to you?
Fog is what is fog? It's just the mist. It sure can, but it's not hot. Is fog hot? Since when would fog ever
Well,
be
let's
hot? I
stay on
lived
this
in
topic.
England for many years. It's
Let's stay
freezing.
on this one topic. What happens to boiling hot water when you throw it into the freezing air?
Show me that in nature.
Okay, I'll put up a video. Now, here's the thing.
Not someone throwing water in the air. Show me in nature.
Anytime in nature, boiling water is confronted with cold temperatures, it's going to do this.
Show me boiling water in nature.
Okay, I'm not exactly sure how to satisfy your question there, what the right answer is.
Well, let's say man did not boil water on a stove or outside fire and throw it in the air. That would satisfy me. Anything but that.
Okay, well, you're not denying that this happens, though, right? You're not denying that boiling water in freezing air.
It's manipulated by man. Man introduces another element into an element that it doesn't belong
when
in.
an airplane at a high altitude with hot jet exhaust and some condensate flies at this high altitude, what happens then is a natural property of high altitude rarefied air with jet exhaust. It's a natural consequence. That's what I mean by
man
natural.
putting it in there.
Okay, we can say it's man caused.
There's nothing natural when it's
Okay,
man.
the term then is anthropogenic cirrus cloud. It's an anthropogenic cirrus cloud.
Why didn't they teach us that in school?
They probably did. I mean, it depends on.
No, they didn't. I've been studying that. I went back and looked at the school. I graduated in '77. No, they did not teach it. They had, I think, 5 or 6 clouds, and that was it. And storm clouds,
If you had specialized in meteorology, I mean, I can't remember specifically, but I went on a field trip to Sandia Labs, and that's here in Albuquerque. And I remember distinctly a course where they were showing us all these different types of clouds, different altitudes, and I couldn't memorize them all. So I do recall this, but no, I was never specifically taught about the formation of condensation trails. And so the ignorance there made me, I think, vulnerable to believing that there's something nefarious going on. So when someone says, "What are they spraying?" I'm like, I don't know.
See, I'm not arguing on the side of your chemtrails. I'm not even saying that. I'm saying you telling me you throw hot water into the air. That's good. I said, show me that in nature. That's all I said.
Okay. Well, let me look. If somebody in the 777 says, if water freezes in the air and no one is there to observe it. Good question.
No, be quiet. If worms had machine guns, birds wouldn't mess with them either. Yeah, okay, good question. Anyway, so I was looking into this. I was studying it. And so if you look up and type in, lady complains in Palm Springs about vapor trails. And that's from 1959. I went way back looking for all this stuff when I was into it like years ago. If you type that up, that still will come up today, where the general answers her that they're just vapor trails. They used to call them vapor trails in the 50s and 60s.
Okay.
And if you type that up, it'll come right up. Lady complains about vapor trails in Palm Springs.
Now listen to this. This is the Appleman chart. If you look it up, you can find articles here how to use the Appleman chart for planning. And interestingly, it says how to read this chart to predict contrails. And it breaks it down here, and it says in 1953, a scientist named H. Appleman published a chart that can be used to determine when a jet will or will not produce contrails. And it's based on
right, and I've read it. It's between 28 to 32,000 feet. I told you I read all that stuff. I'm not arguing chemtrails.
Right,
but I also studied and tried to find anything about other clouds until the last about 2007, where they started making up all these other clouds that were in my grandkids' school books. So yeah, I until you find in 1965 those clouds mentioned anywhere.
Okay,
and I tried.
Okay, now
but,
the classification of clouds into types was first proposed by Luke Howard in 1802, and we use the same: stratus, cumulus, and cirrus. So they have these 3 categories from 1802, and then they've gone into subcategories and additional 10 basic clouds. As far as when these different were introduced,
I told you.
I'll have to check the different years they were introduced, but 3 to 5 terrestrial clouds in descending order, and then you have various.
And then they've added to all these others. Don't say they can't add to it with just to very confuse people more, because I know they weren't the clouds. I was so into cloud seeding and stuff in the 80s. I was watching what they were doing in Oklahoma and everything like that, and they stopped them. The government took it over.
Well, the clouds haven't changed. The skies haven't changed. There's been no qualitative difference to the sun in the last 100 years. There's no.
I'm not talking.
No, what I'm saying is
You're
that.
going to
No,
parts
what
I'm
I'm
not
saying
even
is.
arguing about. I agree
So
with you.
there may be more nuanced definitions for different types of clouds, but that doesn't mean that science is dishonest. It means they're getting better at defining things more precisely. The Appleman chart.
They did not have those clouds.
It's not a
They weren't
Mandela
there. They're
effect.
starting to say they're natural. Okay, no, I don't believe in that crap either.
What I'm
Come on.
saying is like no, there's you can research it and find out when these different clouds were identified and labeled as such. But I think what would have limited it was our own ability to get to certain altitudes. And as observations increase, we have more data. We come up with better explanations. That's what science is. It's not closed. It's not a belief system. It's a methodology to arriving at a better
You
understanding.
already said that the airplane up there is not a natural phenomenon. It's not natural.
Uh,
It's man interjected it into it, and it causes it then. Without man, it wouldn't happen.
yeah, just like without man, there'd be no roads.
Okay?
Without man,
And
yes.
my kid's book says it's a natural cloud. It says nothing about the planes. It says nothing about that. They're just calling them natural clouds.
Well, I think the correct word would be anthropogenic, but
You
but
can dance around it all you want. I'm not arguing with you. You're arguing with yourself what I'm telling you.
well, no. But what are you exactly saying about these anthropogenic cirrus clouds? Because what's in it? What's in the cirrus cloud?
I don't care. I just know
What I'm saying is,
it wasn't. It was,
okay,
all I'm
natural
saying is they're
natural
calling it natural.
okay,
Tell the kids the truth where it's coming
natural
from.
cirrus clouds and anthropogenic cirrus clouds are made out of the same stuff. They happen at the same altitude, and they're fundamentally no different, but one is man-caused anthropogenic. But there's nothing special.
I'm not different, but they're man-caused. Do you just listen to what you said?
Yeah, like for example, wind or your ceiling fan. Both can blow air on you. One is man-caused, one is natural, but both involve air moving, air flow. I'm saying these are distinctions without differences.
Come on. I'm arguing the point that they're calling it natural to the kids.
Okay, well, I would need to see specific quotes on that because the correct term is anthropogenic, but it's a natural or rather expected, normal, regular, non-extraordinary phenomenon. There's nothing extraordinary about it, nothing unexpected about it, nothing quote unnatural about it. It is
I
completely,
just want to say it's man-made, man-caused.
yeah, it is. No one disputes that man is behind
But you
anthropogenic
can't
cirrus
use
clouds.
natural with that.
Okay,
I'm nature. It's
The word
natural.
nature, nature versus man, and what man does is somehow unnatural. I don't necessarily agree with that definition, but
No, it isn't unnatural. They cause it, though. Without man doing that, you wouldn't have that happen.
yeah, I call it
Period. That's simple.
anthropogenic. Anthropogenic, right?
You can call it Mickey Mouse for all I care.
But
It's not
look,
natural.
without paid government agents, nobody would believe that those things were poisonous or changing the
I
weather.
don't think they're poison. I'm not argue. I never argue
No, no,
chemtrails
but
with you
a lot of people
ever.
think that they're altering the weather or they're poisonous. And if you believe those things, that's man caused. That's lie based. That's misinformation.
Okay. So what's your point?
My
I
point is,
didn't say it wasn't.
that chemtrails don't exist, contrails exist. That's my point. And the science of contrails is very well understood, and we know why anthropogenic cirrus clouds happen.
Because the guy threw a bucket of boiling water way up there in the air and
No, no, no,
made it
no, because
freeze.
of decades and
I'm
decades of
teasing you.
observation and what's that. No, no, I mean, look, you could do this. This is interesting. Like you could do this for yourself. You could talk to a meteorologist and ask them, "Hey, can you give me some information and then maybe predict for yourself when you're going to have a contrail laden day and when you're not." And you would probably be able to get some answers. I'm going to do it myself because I'm in the business here of arriving at truth. And I don't see any
Right. No,
chemtrail believers
and I
trying
agree
to
with you on
understand it.
chemtrails. You know that, right? You understand? I agree with you on
Sure.
chemtrails.
So, yeah, yeah, I don't think we're in disagreement here. But to your point, the teachers should be saying anthropogenic cirrus clouds. That's what they
Nah,
should be
and
saying.
that's just a new cloud they've made up when something man's interfered with the nature. Anyway, Linda Curtis says in the chat, "Is man natural? Is man nature? Yeah, but the things man make out of everything you make, your house, your car, your roads, anything like that. That's man's reality. He's taken nature and redone it and made it into his reality, what he wants. Of course, if you just want to live in nature, which none of us want to do, you just sit out there on the middle of a field and shoot buffalo, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, man's natural, but man does, when he interacts with nature, he manipulates nature. That's a fact. Gases, anything. Man manipulates nature. He cannot recreate nature. There's nothing man can make. Man can't make a seed. Man can't make a tree. Man can't make water. There's nothing in nature man can make. He can only use it and reuse it into purpose it. There's nothing man can make in nature. Do you know anything he can make in nature?
No. In fact, one of the
No.
reasons why I've been very opposed to the climate change theory is that it seems to make this notion that um, nature is being victimized by man and man needs to restrain himself. And I think that's a form of control. And I think that, if anything, this realm is here for us to use, that man is here to manifest, that we are the builders of this place, we're different from every other species, and that we have to modify our environment to exist. So, like, I see these eschatologies based on man's destroying the world as
I don't know that word. What's that word?
end times.
Eschatology.
Eschatology, like end times,
Huh?
like end times,
Oh,
doomsday. And I'm just saying,
oh
like,
yeah, yeah,
climate
yeah.
change doomsday is meant to limit human progress. And similarly, I think any belief that says man's the enemy of the world is putting the world above man. And I think that's an inversion. So I reject both of these notions. I don't think the world's
I can
ending.
see how you can categorize them together very much. You know, the first 8 years, like up to 2012, I was going, oh yeah, Dean Washington, Dean Winter, whatever his name is, I've forgotten now. It's been so long. And I'm going, oh, they got all this stuff in Mount Shasta, and they look at barium, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And they were saying the three metals and aluminum and rhodium. You've heard it. It's been so many years now, I just don't care. I said, come on, people. If they were going to poison us, we'd be dead. What are you thinking? I mean, that's the most illogical, to me, thought ever, that they're poisoning us.
Yeah,
You know? And
yeah, yeah, agreed.
then Harvard does put out the article that Bill Gates wants to dim the sun. That article's there to put out for Harvard. Is it a real one from Harvard? I don't know. You've seen it, haven't you?
Yeah, it's probably misconstrued, but here's the thing. Bill Gates is behind geoengineering. And
Right.
geoengineering is not weather modification. Geoengineering is a proposed set of ideas that don't even exist yet as things they can do in practice, but it's this idea that we can combat climate change by blocking the amount of sun we get. And so conspiracy theorists say Bill Gates wants to block the sun. Well, no, he wants to mitigate climate change. And if you're going to fall into this trap of Bill Gates wants to block the sun, then you're automatically accepting the premise that climate change is happening and we need to do something about it. So they use the term geoengineering in a different sense. So geoengineering is it's climate change mitigation, and it doesn't exist as an actionable way to control climate. It's just amazing to me how the whole chemtrail premise is rooted in a lot of baseless paranoia and ignorant claims. And a lot of it's based on fear, interestingly. Fear of Bill Gates, like that's the least scary guy in the world. Be like, he's going to block the sun. But, to me, Bill Gates is a puppet, just like Elon Musk, partisan puppets, the billionaires to be afraid
I don't
of.
know what year this is from. Have you ever seen the article from, I think it was 2017, it says Harvard Solar Geoengineering Research Program,
Yeah,
funded by Bill Gates?
yeah, people cite this stuff, but it's like, yeah, they say that we might need to do this to block climate change. Well, climate change doesn't exist. So, and
I
again,
know that.
what I'm saying
So
is
if
that,
you
like,
can't have one,
no, what I'm saying is you can't cite geoengineering as proof of chemtrails or anything, because
exactly.
geoengineering is an environmentalist thing, and it's based on accepting the premise of environmentalism. So anyone who says
That's just
geoengineering,
another, yeah, I agree with you 100%. I agree. It's just one, if your foundation is a lie, then everything they say about it is a lie too.
right?
That's what I'm saying. They just can't add geoengineering. Oh, now we're having trouble. We're going to throw up these planes and block and dim the sun. They didn't say block. They call it dimming,
Well,
dimming
yeah,
the
yes,
sun.
and it's a fake solution for a fake problem. And so I have conspiracy theorists saying, "Well, look at this." I'm like, "Well, that's a fake solution for a fake problem, and it doesn't advance your
Right.
position." The fact
It's
is,
like
I've never
it's like
encountered.
it's like a Superman comic book. Oh, Superman gets hurt by kryptonite, but you know what? Kryptonite's not real, and neither is Superman. Get it through your guys' heads. That's simple. That's my way I tell them. You know, climate change isn't real. Geoengineering to stop climate change isn't real. Same thing. Kryptonite Superman. Is
Exactly.
that bad to say?
And now they're doing this thing called direct air capture, DAC. It's a technology to
You
suck,
see that?
yeah, to suck the air. They want to suck the carbon out of the air. This is the world's largest plant to suck carbon out of the air. This is a new story.
Guess where they got that idea from? I so laughed. I'm old enough to remember. In the Beverly Hillbillies, and they were all complaining about smog in the 60s, right? You know the Beverly Hillbillies are?
Yes, yes.
Okay, Granny was all these times. She's always worried about her because she had all these remedies, right? And she goes, "Yeah, we figured out a way to get rid of all the smog from L.A." And so they're all there, and of course, it ends up at the end of the show and saying, "Yeah, we're going to donate this millions of dollars to put a big fan, cut a hole in the mountain, and have it suck it all out."
God.
That
Okay,
reminds me of the
that's exactly what they're doing. Scientists have set up a way to suck planet heating carbon pollution from the air. So that's geoengineering. So they're going to suck carbon out of the air. And I'm like, okay, that's ludicrous, right? That's just absurd. But
it was on Yahoo's front page today. That story we were talking about is on Yahoo's front page.
now I have a
It
comment
sucked the air out.
I want to address here from 5 Minutes of
Okay.
Fame. This is an interesting one. He says, "To think no one wants to hurt us, that is the delusion." So what I'm going to point out here is this: the powers that be need everybody scared. They got the liberals terrified of climate change. They're scared of SUVs. They're scared of hamburgers. They're scared of free market. But the right wing, the conspiracy theorists, aren't afraid of that, but they need them to be afraid. So they like fear chemtrails. And so when 5 Minutes of Fame says, to think that no one wants to hurt us is a delusion means he believes that people want to hurt him. He's being hurt. He's being poisoned. Those planes, the secret projects, you're being hurt by your government. So now you have a reason to live in fear. And to me, that's how they win. If they can get you to fear something that you can't prove, that is technically a delusion. So that's a paranoid delusion to believe in chemtrails or whatever. Not believing in chemtrails is not a delusion. It's actually ataraxia, peace of mind, skepticism.
Well,
But
you gave me something to back to look. I'm gonna look harder for those clouds mentioned earlier, and I'm gonna make sure it's something that they couldn't have added back in there with their little GBT chat GPT stuff. I'm gonna look for whatever.
yeah,
I
do
got
it.
old
Do
school
it.
teachers that are 80s. Maybe there's some old school books. I'd rather go off that than something that's almost on the internet nowadays, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Okay, well, hey, I appreciate the call. This is an interesting topic, and yeah, and I'm gonna bring up this article here about the carbon sucking machines. All right, have a great day, Harmon. Thank you for calling.
Okay, I was gonna say thank you for letting me call, and I'm on your side on the chemtrails.
Awesome. All right, good talking to you. See ya.
Bye.
All right. Well, we are wading through misinformation. I mean, that's what we're really looking at. Malinformation, deliberate confusion. Scientists have set out a way to suck planet heating carbon from the air to store it in the oceans. This could be more efficient than current carbon capture technology. Tackling the climate crisis means drastically reducing burning of fossil fuels that releases the planet heating pollution. One method is to capture carbon directly at the source. Another focuses on direct air capture that involves sucking carbon pollution from the atmosphere and storing it. This says it may be a very potent planet heating gas, but they can capture it and remove it, but it's challenging and it's expensive. And this is a ridiculous, probably intended to fail project just to make it look pointless. Like there's nothing we can do. We tried everything. We tried sucking the air. We tried blocking the sun. We're just going to have to go communist. Capitalism is just too hard on Mother Nature. And that's where they're leading us. But again, if you're a chemtrail believer, I don't respect beliefs. If you're believing in climate change, I don't respect your belief. I'm not a believer. I think it's time in the age of information to move out of belief systems and adopt an operating system, a philosophical posture that is antithetical to becoming a mind numbed sheep dependent on some face on a screen to tell you what to think. This is really about assuming authority over your own mind, becoming the arbiter of what you choose to believe or not believe. And when it comes to religious beliefs, I'm more hands off because there's a big distinction between understanding this world from your own perspective outside the bounds of the scientific paradigm and getting into the quote spiritual, there's a big difference between that and then believing media like a religion. And so I'm very critical of mainstream media and alternative media because it is a modern religion. Media itself has supplanted religion, but it's also the alt media. They're just as guilty, they're just as mired in belief systems as is the mainstream. Okay, 5 Minutes of Fame says, okay, everything Bill Gates does increases everyone's health and longevity. I was actually citing this earlier. It's called the appeal to motive. If you don't agree that Bill Gates is trying to kill us, you must therefore think that he is trying to help us and that he loves us. There's no middle ground. If you disagree with me, you agree with the other side. Oh, if you don't believe in this, oh, you don't believe in climate change? Oh, I guess you just think that CEOs should allow their companies to dump poisons in the water. Oh, you don't believe in chemtrails? I guess you think it's okay for airplanes to spray poison in the face of babies? That's a rhetorical tactic. Like, no, I'm not saying everything Bill Gates does is healthy or whatever. I'm saying that Bill Gates doesn't have the power to block the sun. But the consensus among truthers is that Bill Gates is the devil. And the consensus among libs, Elon Musk is the devil. But then, if you're on the left, Bill Gates is your savior. If you're on the right, Elon Musk is your savior. You see how that works? If you're falling into a bifurcated psyop, if you're checking one of two boxes, you're under their spell. And I can prove it. If you use the word I believe, then you are under their spell because you don't know. Now, again, the reason why I say I don't respect beliefs, 5 Minutes of Fame, is that these are things you can't substantiate. Like like someone's like, I believe that unicorns are marking their territory in the stratosphere, and it's leaving these persistent trails that are screwing up the weather. Like, do I have to respect that? If you hear a twig snap in the woods at night and you believe it was Bigfoot, do I have to respect that? If you believe that the burning of fossil fuels is causing the ocean levels to rise and we're all going to die by 2030 if we don't give all of our money and power to Al Gore, do I have to respect that? No. You don't respect the beliefs of the other side. I don't respect the beliefs of the other side. And I don't respect the beliefs of the anti position. I'm saying that these are things that can be disarticulated, taken apart. They're worthless. We need to move into the realm of agnosticism and knowing what we know. This is the age of information. Although you're welcome to remain a believer and stay in the mainstream box. You're welcome to stay a believer and be in the alternative media box. Whether you're a woker or a truther, stay in your boxes. I'm not trying to pull you out of it. No one's forcing you to think your way out of their labyrinth. Moving on. Okay, let's see. Now, I'm not saying that you're lockstep on everything. This is one of these things. It's an issue by issue thing, and chemtrails is very pernicious. 5 Minutes of Fame says there's too many people. Also, I want everyone to live forever and have 15 babies. Yeah, see, isn't that interesting? There's a population crisis. Everyone agrees. If you're in the mainstream, if you're in the mainstream worldview, there's a population crisis. We can all agree. But the people on the left say there's too many people. The people on the right say there's not enough people, specifically white. But they both agree there's a crisis, but they disagree on whether it's too many or too little. So I'm like, wait, it can't be both. These are contradictions. It's another one of these bifurcated psyops. That's how you know it's fake. That's actually, it's autohoaxology axiom number 47. Kevin Mooring says they're not poisoning the sky, they're poisoning your mind. Exactly. Great point. Dewis and Paris says, don't drink the water, there's blood in the water. And think about this too, because I stopped drinking tap water because of Alex Jones. I'm happy to admit it. Because he said, oh, they're putting fluoride in the water. It'll make you apathetic and calm. And that hasn't been my experience because I've never been apathetic or calm. And I've consumed tons of tap water. And I think even I guess it was throughout my time in the military, there was no choice. You're just drinking from whatever faucet that you had, and you fill your canteens. And I didn't really think about it until Jones. And then he's like, "No, you can't drink that water." And so I switched to bottled water because I didn't want to take the apathy poison. So I'm drinking bottled water for a few years, and then Jones starts saying, "Well, if you're drinking bottled water, you're getting these chemicals, bisphenol A or something, and it's going to screw up your hormones, and you're basically going to have estrogen, and you're going to become less of a man if you drink bottled water." So I'm like, wait a minute here. So the bottled water's bad, tap water's bad, and looking at it now, I'm thinking this is needless paranoia that can only lead to nocebo effects and psychosomatic effects. It's just pointless to stress about these things. But I think it's all really interesting when we examine the field of mind war. That's what it is. It's a theater of psy-war. So like on the right, as I said, they're afraid we're running out of people. That's why Alex Jones is like super male vitality pills. Have more babies. And then the left is like fight for the right to have abortions. And having a child is condemning a woman to slavery and oppression. So you have this idea of too many people, not enough people. Have more babies, don't have babies. Toxic masculinity, Barbie feminism. It's schismatic. It's split down the middle. It's mind control. It's the Masonic dialectic. That's the meaning of the black and white tiles on the floor. And if you're in the black or you're in the white, you're under their control. They're walking on your heads on a level above you. Thank you, Harmon Walker. Harmon Walker has walked into the think tank here with 10 shiny new blue wrenches, each one inscribed with IPS. Sync Lloyd has received a blue wrench. G33, Let's Go, Joe Mama, Frank Zen, Adam Cook, Fativius Prime, Jimbo, My Third Eye J, Chalk Body Outline have all received the prized blue wrench. Abuse the power responsibly. Linda Curtis says, I see many people having babies every day. Population is already controlled by natural circumstances and life choices. I saw some truther the other day say, we don't see pregnant people anymore. You don't see children anymore. I love it when people make these arguments from their own blinkered perspective. I'm sure you didn't see any babies. I'm sure you're not seeing any pregnant women. Like, that's probably true. Depends on where you are. If you're in your basement or you're in your own little world, maybe you're not. Try walking to a hospital. Go walk. You hear these arguments like pandas don't exist. I've never seen one, and these ones in the video look fake. That's interesting to note how when you're presented with a limited selection and you choose from that, how you can double down on your choice in the face of facts. That's what I mean. It's about expanding your frame of reference is what I'm ultimately getting at here. If you're in woke town, you're blinkered, you're married to government, and you believe that basically white people are the devil and capitalism is killing the earth. And of course, on the other side of the fence, you got the truthers. But they're all in the same box. From my perspective, it's a subset of mainstream. And I'm trying to look at this from outside the box. And one of the main things to point out or to include in your out of the box perspective is the fact that there is a box. There is a box. The world stage is a model. People think the world stage, that the world view we have, that we share, that we get through the screen is the world. No, it's an interpretation, and it's a very selective interpretation, and it omits quite a lot intentionally. And one of the main things it omits, special effects. It omits the fact that it is a liar, that it is a fabricator, a confabulator. It omits the fact that the media are not reporting the news, but they are creating a worldview. That they are not informing you about the world, but they are conforming you to the world as they define it. Media is not what we think it is, or what the masses think it is. The box is real, the world stage is real, and it's false. But until you can see it for what it is, your perspectives are always going to be limited. You're going to have a limited set of options, and you're going to believe ridiculous things. It's like it's as ridiculous to say we live on a ball in space as it is to say I don't believe in panda bears. Both of these are perspectives that you would only arrive at by only selecting from the limited options given to you by those who are forming your worldview for you. We need to stop staring at the world through Big Brother's viewfinder. Cannabear says Alex Jones is why I quit tap water too. Yeah, not only did I quit tap water, but I was very close to getting one of his water filters because he was selling water filters. And at the time, it didn't really connect with me that he's telling you to fear the water and then he's selling you water filters. He's telling you, oh, Fukushima, it's going to send fallout across the ocean. And then the next commercial, he's selling you iodine. Take iodine, it'll protect you from radiation. Like, I'm waiting for Alex Jones. Like, why hasn't Alex Jones cornered the market on chemtrail masks and 5G protective undergarments so you don't get sterilized in your sleep? Because that's what they're doing, the 5G towers, aiming at your gonads while you sleep. Prove me wrong. See, it doesn't work that way. You can't assert wild things without evidence. And sorry, but again, to get to the topic, chemtrails are an extraordinary claim. Matt X says, it only seems Americans are afraid of fluoride in the water. No problem here. Well, it's an ancient fear. The enemy's poisoning the well. Okay, if you just called, you want to call right back? I will answer the phone. But as I've been analyzing these various things, I think that the fear of the sky taps into some primal fear. Similarly, I think fear of the water taps into some fear about the other. The enemies poison the well. It's easy to sell. Hey, your water's poisoned, but I got the filter. How convenient. What a sales pitch. It's a wonderful sales pitch. But what doesn't sell me on it when I look at the vitamins, the super male vitalities, the water filters, I look at the people selling this stuff. And I'm like, is this guy a paragon of health, stability? Does he look like he's been drinking very clean water? Or does it look like maybe it's just a grift? And for all these healthful decisions, it's probably being canceled out by a lot of unhealthful decisions. Cinnabar says, yep, what happened with Fukushima, radiation everywhere. Yeah, that was a thing they hyped up for a little while. And then it's not the current thing right now. That was the original 311. 311, 2011. David Hazel says, I admit I bought a Berkey from him back in the day. Well, like a couple months ago, I was out of bottled water, and I remember I was just like, I was kind of annoyed because I'm always carrying these big cases of water, and I'm always the one that has to carry it. It's like a new chore. And it's like, what? Are we just going to live as though our tap water is poison, but we use it for the coffee? And I just rebelled one day, and it's like, I'm not going to do the bottled water thing anymore. I'll buy a single big one, Chuck Norris water. He just stares at the ground, and these bottled waters come out, the Sea Force. I'll drink Sea Force because I like the size of the bottle and it's convenient, but I'm not going to carry big cases of water upstairs anymore because of the idea that it will make me somehow calmer. Like, it'd be nice. Let me drink some tap water and calm down. Like, you get coffee, you get hyped up, drink tap water. No, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't make you apathetic. It doesn't do anything. Jake the A-hole says, on the back of the toothpaste with fluoride, it has a warning to contact poison control if consumed. Let's see you eat some tubes of fluoride toothpaste, Tim. Poison is in the dosage. Let's see you drink 2 gallons of distilled water. No, please don't do that. You would kill yourself. I mean, it's hyponatremia. Drinking too much water is terrible, so I guess water's poison. You can call poison control and say, hey, what happens if I drink too much water? Poison is in the dosage. And I'm sure if you were to consume a whole tube of toothpaste, you would probably have a stomach ache. But I don't even think that would kill you. Nor do I think it would make you apathetic. I don't think it'd be a neurotoxin to the extent that water is supposed to be, according to Alex Jones. John Cordone says the media doesn't inform you, it conforms you. This should be on a t-shirt. We'll have to do some bumper stickers. Like if you aren't auto hoaxing, you aren't paying attention. Jake the A-hole says, look into any type of fluoride in the water, where it comes from. You must not have done any research. I have done the research on it, and I think it's a psyop. I think it's a psyop. I don't fear my tap water, but I do believe you that a lot of it would be bad. I think a lot of anything would be bad. Again, poison in the dosage, I think that's the case. But anyway, I'm not arguing. I mean, what's worse? What's worse? Drinking bottled water and having your estrogen levels tampered with, or drinking tap water and getting the whatever effect it is. Again, what is the fluoride in the water supposed to do? At least, what's the conspiracy theory? I read that it makes it so you don't resist. Water fluoridation controversy. Science says it's good for kids. Like when something says science, and it's NBC News. According to NBC News, science says fluoride in water is good for kids. I can understand where you're like, okay, get this stuff away from my children. I understand the appeal to motive. It's like those people think it's a good idea. Anyway, let's see what we have here. National agencies and dental associations of the world support the safety and effectiveness of it. Minimal risks. The opponents say it's an infringement of individual rights and an outright violation of medical ethics. Now that is a great point. You know, do you want someone to have the ability to regulate something so central to your existence? Well, obviously, this is why people would care. Opposition has existed since the 40s. There were claims that fluoridation was a communist plot to undermine the American health. So it's a communist plot. The controversy is propelled by a significant public opposition supported by a minority of professionals that include researchers. We know what those are. Researchers are the new devil. Dental and medical professionals, health food enthusiasts, and religious groups. Mostly Christian scientists are against it. Interesting. Organized political opposition has come from libertarians and the John Birch Society and the Green parties in the UK and Zealand. Now, this is all really interesting, the libertarian angle, because I find that the chemtrail thing mostly attracts libertarians. And libertarians, I think they're just liberals with guns. Like they don't even belong on the right. But for some reason, libertarians see themselves as they're looked at as separate, but their main enemy, because Azarello, Maxwell Azarello, the guy who burned himself, was something of a libertarian, and so they're against fascism, and fascism is government-controlled corporations. So the right wing is against government, left wing is against corporations because, of course, capitalism. But libertarians manage to be against both. Oh, government-controlled corporations. So it's interesting that they're kind of their own group. I think it's completely expected when I see these individuals set themselves on fire. They're the ones who are always enraged because they're scared of both sides. So they're kind of like stuck with a bigger burden. And this belief in chemtrails definitely is compatible with climate change belief. So that's another kind of overlap. But again, fluoride in the water, I look at this as another truth or orthodoxy. I think it's very questionable. During the second Red Scare in the United States in the 40s and 50s, and to a lesser extent in the 60s, the right wing of American politics asserted this was a plot to impose a communist regime. This was an aspect of the president's socialist agenda, socializing medicine. The same groups also oppose mass vax and mental health services. Now that's interesting. Okay, now this may get into something like Reagan opening up the asylums. This may be getting somewhere. I'm looking at this is a consistent development along the lines of everything else I'm looking at here. Others assert the existence of a communist plot to deplete the brain power and sap the strength of a generation of American children. I remember Alex Jones used to say, "Oh yeah, you see the liberals and their children with the fluoride stare, the fluoride heads. They don't believe that the elite are trying to kill us." He would refer to them as fluoride heads, the fluoride stare. Like drinking the water just turns you into a zombie. Hilarious stuff. Quite the comedian. The communist conspiracy declined in influence by the mid 60s. It became associated in the public mind with irrational fear and paranoia. It was portrayed in Stanley Kubrick's 1964 film Doctor Strangelove, in which the character General Jack D. Ripper initiates a nuclear war in hopes of thwarting a communist plot to sap and impurify our precious body fluids with fluoridated water. Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. I'll have to watch that movie. So Jack D. Ripper wanted a nuclear war to stop the communists from fluoridating our water. Another satire appeared in the 1967 movie called In Like Flint, in which a character's fear of fluoridation is used to indicate that he's insane. Now, this is interesting because do you remember the whole story about Flint, Michigan? The water in Flint, Michigan? Wasn't that a big Michael Moore thing? Flint water crisis. So this is interesting. I don't know if I'm going down a rabbit trail here, but In Like Flint is a 1967 parody about this issue, and Flint, Michigan is known for having bad water. In 1987, Ian Stevens authored a booklet that was published in the Austrian New Age magazine Nexus, and he claimed repeated doses of infinitesimal amounts of fluoride will reduce an individual's power to resist domination by narcotizing a certain area of their brain, and it will make them submissive to the will of those who wish to govern them. Now, I did come across a urine therapy practitioner who said that fluoride calcifies your third eye, and you can decalcify your third eye by snorting your urine. Now, that's a practice. I'm not going to Google it. You can Google it. It's on the internet. There are people who snort it, and they believe that they are, quote, decalcifying their third eye from a lifetime of drinking fluoridated water. I think even David Icke made that suggestion. Okay, continuing, a couple more minor points here. In the Netherlands, they managed to declare it unauthorized, and they said the authority had no legal basis for adding it to the water, and it has not been fluoridated in the Netherlands since 1973. So if we compare the Americans of today to the individuals in the Netherlands, how are they different? Are they more rambunctious? Are they unruly in the Netherlands? Is it a group of anarchists, free thinkers, free spirits, anti-media, or are they just like us? Like, I'm kind of curious to know, is there a qualitative difference? Have they pacified the American mind? Let me catch up on some comments. Diana South says, Greta has the fluoride stare. Matt X says, I'd be more worried about the condition of the pipes than the fluoride. Yes. The water at Fort Bliss, Texas was so bad that beneath our water fountains, there would be just white, the floor would just be white, crusted with this white powder, just like, we drank it, just despite the residue. But that was before I caught up on Alex Jones. Was it calcium or something? I am catching up on your comments. Ollie Goering says poor nutrition has already made people R-worded. Five Minutes of Fame says Flint, Michigan is all about getting the town getting the town off of Great Lakes water and linking to the river that Chevrolet dumped car paint and rust proofing in. Oh, nice. Look, I'm not an anti-environmentalist. I do believe that we have to maintain a clear living environment. I think the left has unfairly appropriated the topic. But I think if you look at the actual results on the ground, socialism and communism are way worse for the environment than free market, than capitalism, than ownership. Property ownership is good for the environment. That's, I think it's already been established. Capitalism is way better for the environment than any other system. Dewis and Paris says the process of distilling water leaves visible gunk behind, but who knows, maybe the gunk would help me grow big and strong. Nasal enemas, says Diana South. Yeah, nasal enemas to cleanse your third eye. Nothing Major says, has anyone watched Baby Reindeer? I'm trying to catch up on my Netflix research, my predictive programming research. I finally finished the first episode of Fallout, and what really stands out is the main character, Lucy, is underground in a delusion, in a simulation, or in a bunker where everything's basically detached from the real world. And then she goes to the surface. They try to stop her. She opens the portal and she walks into the light. And then the door closes behind her. It's got a big 33 on it. So you already have this subtext of ascending from a delusion, from a Truman Show, from a fake world into the real world. And then the ascension of from the darkness underground to the light, the crown at the surface. And then a big 33 behind her. It's pretty blatant symbolism. This is Jonathan Nolan connected to Christopher Nolan, so you see all the same patterns here, predictive programming and an occult subtext. Salty Siren says nose wide open. Oh yes, the nose wide open party. That was a pretty dark chapter in South Pole. It was a eyes wide shut like party, but the elite all go and what were they doing? They were using the PCR tests. They were massaging the third eye or something. All right, we're moving on here. Fluoride in the water, chemtrails. These are both truther orthodoxies, and they all need to be confronted. Go into my minds.com/Infinite Plane Society. Again, TikTok will automatically label AI generated content for the visually illiterate who can't tell real from fake. This is real, this is fake. This is real, this is fake. Of course, they look the same. We encountered this post 10/7. It's like Al Jazeera posts this video. It's like, look, this is a doll. It's a fake corpse. And then later there's a correction. No, actually it's a real corpse. We mistakenly reported it as fake, but it's real. So now it's real. But it was fake from the time we called it fake until we corrected the story. That's why I call this the desert of the designated real, because it's all going to look fake, but if they say it's real, it's real. If you're dependent on media for your sense of reality, this is very helpful. It'll help you navigate the world. Teens kicked out of elite Catholic school after blackface. Awarded $1 million by jury after proving it was false. This is from the New York Post. These three teens at a Catholic school put on this acne cream, like this mud mask, and they took a picture, and they were kicked out of school, accused of doing blackface, which it doesn't even look like blackface if you look at it historically, nor was it attended by anything to suggest that there was any type of racial mockery here. But they got kicked out because of it, and now they are millionaires who don't have to go to school anymore, and they can stay home and play video games all day. And if you look here, the character in the middle, he's doing the devil horns with his hand. And this is a Catholic school, so I'm like, maybe they made a pact with Satan. Like they're in their Catholic school, the devil shows up, and he offers them money or something. I don't know. There's something about this article, though, that just strikes me as just unbelievable. The devil horn sign, I'm not sure what to make of it. Drama continues, just too scripty. This is posted by Sci Obstacles. Judge rejects Hunter Biden's appeal for the gun charges. This article is about how Hunter Biden had purchased a gun, and because he had some kind of drug charge, there's something about it here. They're trying to drop the charges, but they're rejecting it. Now, this is one of these things where I think the rule is, let's see if I can find it. Yeah, Third Circuit Court of Appeal said, well, they're dismissing it. He has a felony gun case, and this is from Delaware, and he was trying to throw it out, and they keep rejecting his attempts to throw it out, and this is being looked at as something of hypocritical because the right is generally against gun regulation, and those who are not in favor of more gun regulation are actually in favor of using gun regulation against Hunter. So it's somewhat hypocritical. But this is bouncing off of this article from last year. Reuters had published this piece. Drug users cannot be barred from owning guns, U.S. says. So I looked into this, and the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration does not administer a drug test, although Daniels admitted that sometimes he smoked marijuana, which the law prohibits, and he was sentenced to 4 years in prison. So this is an individual who, this is Patrick Daniels, was convicted when law enforcement found a pistol and a semi-automatic in his car, and he had pot. But anyway, it's kind of different with Hunter because it's different drugs, but many are looking at this as an example of the right wing is suddenly in favor of a regulation that they would not have been in favor of before. Kind of similar to how on the right they're mad that illegal immigrants can own guns. But I thought the right to own guns was granted by God, not government. I thought it was an inalienable right, that you're born with the right's from God, it's not a privilege from government. Well, not if you're from another country. Pop quiz. This was sent to me by Mr. Trustworthy. Um, this is a pop quiz. A progressive nonprofit that has been shelling out cash to anti-Israel protest groups is being sued by Black Lives Matter Global Network. So how much is BLM suing for? That's the pop quiz. Duas Imperis is 33. Anyone else? Yes, BLM Global Network files a $33 million lawsuit against a group helping to fund college protests. Just a pop quiz. I'm not going to dig too deep into it. There's a lot of money in protesting. And protesting generally doesn't happen unless it's funded. This is a picture from Rolling Stone. Trump is planning to send kill teams to Mexico to take out cartel leaders. So he's just recycling his strongman talk from 2016, 2015. Nothing new here. Obviously not going to happen. Same thing, he's going to build the wall. He's going to kill the drug cartels. He's going to open up the libel laws so the fake news can get sued. No, anyway. But they have an image of him here in the Terminator garb. And it says Ultra MAGA. So Trump as Terminator. This has been a repeated motif. I'll be back. The second coming of Trump. But the Terminator, in the Metascript perspective, is Apollyon, is Abaddon, or Abaddon, like Trump. But it refers to, I think, on some levels, the nuke, the sinking of the West, and it could also refer to Trump himself. But it's interesting that they have Trump as the Terminator. In fact, I did a mind map that I'm going to have to go over later on today, in which I'm connecting the various threads from 9/11 to the Titanic to James Cameron. And one of the interesting things here is that, as you all probably know already, on 9/11, James Cameron was at the scene of the Titanic, filming Ghosts in the Abyss. Now, at that time, the Twin Towers have fallen, and overlooking Ground Zero, there were billboards for a movie called Collateral Damage. Now, this movie was postponed until 2002 because they had to alter it and pull out scenes because it was so reminiscent of 9/11. So interestingly, a movie that predicted 9/11 in so many ways that had to be altered was advertised at Ground Zero on billboards with Arnie's face. So the Terminator was overlooking Ground Zero as James Cameron, who directed the Terminator, is in the Deep Sea Challenger filming Ghosts in the Abyss. Now this has layers to it. Revelation 9:11, King Abaddon over the abyss, or the Terminator, the Apollyon, the Destroyer, all correlated. So you literally had the Terminator or Apollyon looking over 9/11 on that day while he's in the abyss. It's just too layered to deny that this is a deliberately constructed story to have Arnie's face. It's also why Arnold Schwarzenegger is the face of World War Zero, which is this agenda to cut man's carbon footprint in half by 2030. Kevin Mooring says, I think Hunter is a psyop just like Epstein. I agree. I have looked at Hunter Biden's laptop and I cannot find any picture of him with his prostitutes in the hotel rooms that look anything other than fake. It does not look real. Now, I haven't gone through his adult website accounts, but he's got these accounts where he's doing stuff. He's definitely gross and drug-addled and disgusting, but it could all be staged. I don't think the laptop's a nothing burger. It's a huge nothing burger. That's why nothing's come of it. Okay, let's see here. We're just crossing the 2-hour mark. I am going to record a separate video. I have to go over this mind map. It's pretty relevant to what we're talking about now. Appreciate the callers and the comments and your patience as we wade through the sea of mis, dis, and malinformation as we reach a place of skepticism and knowing as opposed to paranoid delusional belief in a world gone reality fluid, utterly insane. This is Chief Crow, Auto Hoax, or GTFO. Subscribe to get the archives to your inbox. If you're still here, I just saw that we have about 10 new wrench holders. Thanks to Upside Down Guy, Nick Cook, Tommy Retail Army, Waters Above, Glenn Bush, Kevin Mooring. You all have been receiving these memberships, so just so you know, you go to the main channel and there's some members only videos that I'm uploading that go public usually a day after, and you get first stab at commenting and critiquing and leaving me messages there. So if you want to subscribe to the main channel and hit the notification button, and if you join, become a member, you'll get first access to these videos. And I'm actually recording one right now over this mind map that I mentioned. So you'll be first to see that. So again, thanks to all of you who are supporting this channel, and we'll see you next time.